Welcome to Everywhere with CRE2, a new podcast produced by the Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity, and Equity at Washington University in St. Louis. In each episode, we'll delve into path-breaking research, innovative learning opportunities, and strategic engagement to better understand how race and ethnicity are integral to the most complex and challenging issues of our present and past.
I'm Hedwig.
And I'm William Acree.
We are your co-hosts for today's episode. In our first conversation, we'll discuss the origins of CRE2 with the center's founding director, Adrienne Davis, the William M. Van Cleve Professor in the School of Law and Professor of Organizational Behavior and Leadership with the Olin Business School.
So as founding director and the lead designer and builder of CRE2, Adrienne is the ideal person to walk us through the trajectory of the center from the moment it was just a spark of the imagination to its full launch in fall 2020. With her, we'll be exploring the motivations, partnerships, challenges, and successes that have shaped the formation of the center along the way. And while the focus of the episode is on origins, we'll also discuss CRE2's future. So welcome, Adrienne.
Hi, it's great to be with you two again.
Yeah, it's so great that you're here. We're excited. Centers and institutes devoted to the study of race and ethnicity have long histories at universities across the U.S. So what makes CRE2 distinct?
Well, in many ways, CRE2 is building on these deep and rich legacies of the many successful race centers that are out there. And in fact, as you know, Billy, we had a very long buildup and on-ramp to recommending the center here at Washington University. And we did the deep survey of centers and had some really helpful conversations with very generous colleagues and founding directors elsewhere. I think part of what we learned is that many centers are located within specific schools at their universities or are anchored to specific fields of study or methodologies for engaging race and ethnicity. And many also are oriented around policy research or development or other very distinct focused missions. And so that's one way in which I think that the CRE2 is distinct. Our goal is to be truly university-wide. We designed the center to engage our colleagues in all 7 of Washington University schools and across all of the disciplines, which was no easy task. And so our ambition and our hope is that this scope and this scale, which are really grand, can truly galvanize transdisciplinary approaches to race and ethnicity, and that they'll also allow for sustained and urgent attention to questions surrounding equity, whether that is appearing in healthcare access or how artificial intelligence and algorithms are revealing deeply rooted racial and ethnic biases, or whether we're looking at how race-related research ends up circulating or not. In addition, CRE2 is designed around the idea that great research universities solve the great problems of our time, and that racism is one of the great problems of our time. Even conservative institutions like the FBI have said that white supremacist terrorism is one of the greatest threats to democracy today. Many centers focus their efforts on their faculty who are outstanding and pioneering scholars of race and ethnicity, and CRE2 is hoping to do that while also encouraging all of our colleagues to explore how race and ethnicity are integral to their research, and especially how their methodologies and approaches may help to surface new research questions, and that those new research questions will help us combat racism or better understand and diagnose it. And I'll give you just a couple of quick examples. So on the one hand, we have, very, very long-standing distinguished scholars. If we've named 5 of them as our inaugural 5 faculty fellows who are going to spend a semester in residence at CRE2 next spring. At the same time, we have smaller resources that are available for colleagues who are testing the waters, as it were. So we've designed a lot of experimental spaces, smaller piloting resources. We have small grants of just $1,000 if someone wants to hire a research assistant or wants to go to a conference. Or if someone says, I think I have an idea and I want to get together with some other folks and kind of see and explore what might be there, they can apply for modest amounts of funding without making a very large commitment that this is going to be at the very, very center of my research. And I think already, we've been really excited to see I think all of the schools, right, Billy and Hetty, I think all of the schools have been coming in and doing things both on these very big, deep scales that we envision, but also colleagues who conventionally their research has not been about race and ethnicity. We also see them applying for resources and doing things that are really quite exciting. And I should say all of these things that we're kind of alluding to, if you want to see sort of who's doing what, who the inaugural faculty fellows are, if you want to see who the incoming graduate fellows are, if you want to see some of the folks who are getting large and small grants, this is all on the CRE2 website. There's another, I think, another aspect that was an ambition that was maybe so secret that maybe even you both didn't know about it, Hetty and Billy, which is that another thing that's distinctive about CRE2 is that the senior leadership and I really saw it as an opportunity for leadership development of the future of our faculty, the folks who are really going to be not only the pioneering, distinguished faculty of the future, but also the people who are going to be the leaders of not just Washington University, but the leaders of the academy. And we thought that CRE2 and these leadership roles, we really wanted to design the center so it would give faculty a lot of opportunities to be intellectual leaders and to lead a really important sort of institution that's at the core of the university's mission. And so I think we're already seeing that. One of the biggest questions that, you and I have been talking about since the planning phase, so going back now, 6-7 years, is how we build a really ambitious research enterprise like CRE2, and one that is embedded in an educating and learning environment, a research university, and one that is designed to not only to last, but also to evolve and to grow as the research questions evolve and transmorph, as the questions about racism and ethnic genocide, ethnic hatred, as these continue to become even more acute and urgent, how does the center evolve? And I don't want to say grow just in the sense of expanding, right? But grow to meet the academic, the research, the learning needs, as well as the non-academic questions about equity, anti-racism, all of this as well. How do we build a research enterprise that is sustainable? How do we design it for evolution and growth? How do we embed that in its very design?
Yeah, it's such a fabulous point you make there, because effectively you're talking about how to make the center a dynamic enterprise, right? That can respond as it needs to respond to all the things that you laid out, but at the same time is stable and has sort of the institutional depth to cover all the areas that it needs to cover. It's a challenging task. I think you laid out so many of the key things about what makes CRE2 unique, and you touched on really sort of the theme of this podcast, right? That is how race, ethnicity, equity are everywhere with us, in our present, in our past, in our future. But I want to take you back just a few years, or like you were saying earlier, right? To take you back 6 or 7 years, thinking about the impetus behind creating a race and ethnicity center at WashU, as the idea was just starting to circulate in the wake of Michael Brown's murder. And if you could just walk us back to that initial period and think through sort of the impetus, the spark.
Yeah. So, Hetty wasn't here yet. She wasn't on the faculty here yet. But Bill, you and I both remember just the deep trauma that the entire region and the university community, obviously as part of the broader region, that we all went through after Michael Brown's murder. And the uprisings in Ferguson, in the calls for racial justice that began in Ferguson and then obviously became, a nationwide and then international movement that in many ways helped to, launch or just certainly grow and draw more attention to the Black Lives Matter movement, which of course has become the largest social movement of our time. So, after Michael Brown's murder, we were all searching, individually and collectively for what role Washington University should be playing. And, we have all of these stated values and commitments to justice and to diversity and to being a good St. Louis citizen. And, I think it was apparent to all of us, including then Chancellor Mark Wrighton, that our actual commitments and actual landscape and community didn't match our stated values and rhetoric and aspirations. So he invited me to lead a 2-year commission on diversity and inclusion to really explore all the ways in which Washington University could aspire to become the university that we want to be, that we aspire to be, and to close that gap between the rhetoric and the daily commitments of resources, the daily decision-making, the daily strategic planning. So the full report, is available on the diversity website. But as part of that, we decided to explore the possibility of a center for race, which rapidly evolved into looking at a center that would study not only race but also ethnicity, and they are overlapping but distinct. And I think that most people who in the fields would say you can't fully grasp one without the other. So that task force took a year, and we wrapped up our report in 2017. So that report sort of sat until, while the university was going through leadership transitions, until our new chancellor, Andrew Martin, was named. And he and I met, it was actually before he had been installed as chancellor, and he said he wanted to meet with me. And he said, I'm really impressed with this recommendation to create this center. And I want to do this. I want this to become my first announced academic initiative. And he said, there's a couple caveats. He said, first, I want this truly to be university-wide. I want it to span and meaningfully include all of the schools, all 7 of the schools, including the professional schools, including the medical school. And he said, and I want it to focus on research. Right? I really want to take what we are great at, right, which is research. I want to take that and I want to bring that to bear on trying to tackle this set of problems. So I said, we can do that. And he said it fit really well with his ambition for the university. He's got 3 pillars of access, right, which is finding ways to bring more people into higher education, becoming Washington University, not Washington University in St. Louis, but Washington University in and for St. Louis, and also academic distinction. And so he especially, I think, really saw how a race center could help Washington University become a deep and profound anchor institution and citizen of St. Louis that was really trying to work in partnership with the city and the county and the region to tackle structural racism, which is, as everybody knows in the world by now, is one of the great challenges of St. Louis. And St. Louis, in that sense, is emblematic of the urban core, nationally, and also, Billy, as we talk about a lot, internationally as well. And so he really wanted us to be in partnership with St. Louis in that way. He also really saw how a race center would become one of the founding pillars of academic distinction. He says, we can't be great at everything, but we can be distinct in several things. And we have been really intentionally building a faculty that is becoming world-class in the study of race and ethnicity. This is an area in which we can have and arguably already do have academic distinction. And so it makes sense to devote these resources in that area. So already, we were kind of, launching, Hetty, Billy, and, the other associate directors at the time, Cynthia Rogers, and Otis Johnson. And then we were joined later by Jeff Ward. But we were kind of preparing and being very deliberate, intentional. And then the dual pandemics hit in the spring of 2020, starting with, of course, COVID-19 and rapidly revealing stark, brutal racial and ethnic disparities in how the disease was being spread, how it was being treated, how it was being diagnosed. And then, of course, right on the heels of that, George Floyd's murder, and then the launch of this, this new social movement that we're in. And the chancellor called me and he said, Adrienne, we can't wait. He said, I already was on board with this center, but, you all just need to get this up and running. Washington University needs to be committing. We need to be getting the research done. We need to be leading in this area. We need to be designing research questions. We need to be reaching out to, not only colleagues elsewhere, we need to be reaching out to the civic institutions and the leaders to figure out how we can help tackle this set of problems. So as you all know, we spent that summer, that long, hot summer of Black and Brown death of 2020, getting the center up and running.
This is awesome hearing the history of the center. I wasn't here. I came in 2017. So it's really interesting to hear, your perspectives, especially after the death of Michael Brown. I know I was in Seattle, and even though I wasn't here, I greatly impacted communities there. So it's really interesting to see how that turned into these other conversations that led to the creation, or one thing that it led to was the creation of this center. I also was excited for you to talk about the great many faculty that we have that study race and ethnicity, and just wanted to mention the cluster hire initiative that you were also helped to lead to continue to bring in excellent faculty doing great work in race and ethnicity across ranks. So that's also really exciting, and we're in the midst of that too. And I think that will be great for the center.
And I'll just add on to that, Hetty, to say, I co-chaired that effort last year, and it's been great to see you stepping into co-chairing it now. So thank you for your leadership. But as you know, a big part of the reason that we've been able to recruit that first cohort of really outstanding folks who we hired in the first round is people said, I'm really excited about the CRE2. I'm excited about wherever I'm being hired, whether it's the School of Law or the McKelvey School of Engineering. I'm excited about the idea of being part of a broader, meaningful, coherent research and intellectual and even personal community that the center will give me access to. And so already it was just so exciting to as we were recruiting people, it was exciting to see how the center would help them build bridges from, say, McKelvey School of Engineering, people working on critical race theory and ways to design algorithms to encourage civic engagement, and connecting those folks up with people doing aligned work in arts and sciences, with CRE2 kind of being this very transparent and kind of robust bridge to help facilitate those multi-tiered engagements.
Yeah, really exciting. And also, I think, as you mentioned, and also what Chancellor Martin wanted was a center that spans all the schools. And I think that's also, as you mentioned, really exciting to be able to, be in arts and sciences, but connect with somebody in the Sam Fox School or somebody in engineering who are having similar kinds of conversations, but not together. Billy talks about this bringing us together, finding spaces to bring us together to have these conversations, or even expanding ideas or notions about race that people are thinking about domestically, but also thinking about them internationally. Anyway, so I'm very excited about all of those things and more. So just going back to the conversation, talking about sort of the beginning inklings of a center, and then the push to make that happen. What were the kinds of partnerships and support that helped with the initial conversations for the center?
There were a few. First, I really want to give a lot of credit to our colleagues who were center leaders and center founding directors. all across the country who were extremely generous with their time and their insights. And, they met with us over, this was pre-Zooms, they met with us over Skype, or they were in town, and they spent a lot of time with us really walking us through the early design of their centers, and also helping us to, I think, identify and anticipate some common obstacles and some common opportunities. And I think, we really made an effort to understand the design and the growth and the obstacles that race centers experience across a range of institutions. We also got incredibly important insights and very, very generous support from the then leaders of African and African American Studies, the Department of African and African American Studies at Washington University. Gerald Early was beyond supportive of what we were trying to do, and really helped us, think through how CRE2 could align with African American Studies, which had just become a department, and how we could find some ways to kind of leverage each other there. And also Mabel Maranya, who is still the director of Latin American Studies, also met with us and really walked us through and helped us to think through how there could be alignments there as well. And we also did a lot of research about our own faculty, including some much delayed belated exit interviews. And what we especially followed up on were junior faculty who had been heavily recruited across the schools and who had left and moved to other institutions. And they were also very generous with their time. And this is all, again, recorded in these reports that are on the diversity website and the CRE2 website. But what a lot of them said, and this was especially true, I think, of our junior faculty who we had lost, who did work in Latinx studies or Latin American studies, working on race and ethnicity. And a lot of them said, I was heavily recruited to Washington University, and then there was, one senior person in my field. And when that person left the university, I lost the ability to really meaningfully try to go out and get grants, or to have the mentorship that I really, really needed, whether it was the mentorship in research or in teaching and putting together courses. And so they left. And one of the things that it really highlighted is that we needed a university-wide deeper infrastructure to support all of our research, but especially that of junior folks, and especially in the areas in which we have not historically had a deep footprint, which is principally in Latinx and Latin American studies, and also in Asian American studies and Native American studies as well. So I think that their candor and their ongoing care for the institution helped us to understand that CRE2 could and should be designed to help really support and activate the research of our junior colleagues and help them find research and intellectual community.
Thanks, Adrienne. I mean, all of this is super interesting, and also interesting in the ways that you're talking about the types of support. So as a center supporting faculty that are doing research in race and ethnicity, helping to recruit and retain them, but also the support needed to actually have a center that can do those kinds of things. And so I was just wondering if you'd talk a little bit about some of the challenges and obstacles along the way in terms of building the center, a center that can do the work to support faculty, staff, students who are engaged in this, in work around race, ethnicity, and equity in meaningful ways. And we know with a commitment to an enterprise like this, institutions have to consider a lot of factors. So I'm curious about the factors you that come to mind as you think about challenges.
So I think that I'm still processing, I'm still kind of, getting some perspective on, on the last several years of our getting the center up and running. And now I'm kind of wishing we had recorded some more of our sessions, so we could go back and try to recover some of it, especially that last summer that, when the world was collapsing during the pandemic and we were trying to get the center launched. But I think that the single biggest challenge was the university's leadership transitions. So CRE2 was taking shape over the course of 2 chancellors, 3 chief academic officers, or provosts, and many deans, and each of whom had their own vision, on their own vision of what the mission should be, and and also different calibrations of what the ambition should be. Should it be grand and sort of statement making, or should it start off very modestly and then grow incrementally over time? So I think that just the transitions were hard, because I think we were kind of continually trying to recalibrate to what all of these different stakeholders envisioned for the center. And at the same time, as you both know, we were jumping into we started off by jumping into some of the biggest university hotspots, and these are hotspots at every university, right? Of course there's money, but the money, I think, was okay to get us started. But the really big hotspots, of course, were the course relief and the space, right? And you all know that. So these are the things that are tricky for every institution, especially because we were having these transitions. And so, one set of leaders said, yes, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to prioritize this aspect of it, and we get super excited. And then we get a new set of leaders, and they say, well, that's, we're redoing the strategic plan, so we can't do those commitments, so we've got to put those on pause, but we'll think about some other things instead. So I think that was just challenging. We're now there. We're now stable. We've got a full alignment of chancellor, chief academic officer, and the dean. So we're now stable. And I think the other part that was challenging was prioritizing our own ambitions. And so, Billy, I still have some of your early sketches. I do hope at some point, Billy, you'll do a podcast on Where's My iPod, which was just our code language for our code language for we have to dream big, right? Let's not start by thinking about constraints. Let's dream big. And let's try to come up with something that's going to be that's going to meet, the research aspirations of a university where people are literally curing cancer and literally put a Mars rover on the moon. So or on Mars, put the Mars rover on Mars. Yes, it was on the Mars rover went to Mars. And so what's the race and ethnicity equivalent of the Mars rover and curing cancer, right? This is what we're trying to figure out, but we're also trying to prioritize. And then there were our own missteps, right? That we cannot, that just were completely ours or were completely mine. And, one of the ones that I still think we have to return to at some point when we all have a little bit more bandwidth was the initial naming of the center, because we really wanted people to understand that the center was dedicated to studying race and ethnicity, and it was not going to be rooted in a black-white binary or paradigm, but it was really we wanted to engage all of the races. So, our initial thought was that we would call it, CRE, Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity and Equity, CREE. And we had some really beautiful ways of playing with that on the verb creer. I don't know if I said that right, Billy.
Yeah, that's right.
I've been trying to learn, which is to believe. And, you can still find some artifacts of that on our website, because we wanted people to believe with us, right? To believe in the power of research, to identify, uncover, help dismantle all of these structural systems. And so we were going to launch as CREE, which we were pronouncing Cree, and it was very intentional. And, again, we were trying to also showcase that, we were trying to, that we really saw ourselves as aspiring to become international, right? And engage with folks in Latin American studies and Latinx studies as well. And luckily for us, we had done that test run on Twitter when we were looking at the logos, when we did the hashtag CREE. And it was really humbling, right? Because that was when I realized, wow, I am offending members of the Cree Native American nation and their many allies. And I hope that for anyone listening to this, I hope you never have a bad experience on social media. But this was my, first bad experience, and it was incredibly humbling, right? It was incredibly humbling because frequently what I see on social media is, people point out you're wrong, and then the person who's wrong just doubles down. And I didn't double down because I was like, you all are right. You all are right, and I am wrong. And I think the part that was especially humbling was I missed it, right? I've been doing critical race theory for 28 years, right? I've been trying to dismantle black-white binaries and ways of thinking about things for 28 years. And here I just I was completely susceptible to it myself. So it was really humbling. But luckily we figured that out in time. And so we were able to rename the acronym as, CRE2 instead of Cree. And, but I think we learned a lot. I still think we haven't finished fully processing it though. So at some point when we all have the bandwidth, we'll have to go back and continue to process it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've talked about lots of the challenges, right, that we had to overcome, mentioning there the name to begin with, and all the things that we were trying to build into the name, right, that we wanted it to encompass, especially thinking of equity, right? The equity piece that we wanted to be alongside the study of race and ethnicity. And I think you talked to about the transitions, institutional transitions, right, that we've had to overcome. And in other places, Adrienne, you've spoken about, you've written about really forcefully the idea of this moonshot that's needed to study race and ethnicity, right? And you hinted at that with the Mars rover. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to come back thinking about sort of the report that you mentioned earlier that we turned in 2017, right? The recommendations there, and how those or your ideas around them were changed, or how they had to adapt, transform as the ideas became more concrete, right? As we really had the chance then to actually begin with the concrete work of getting this center up.
Yeah. It's, I think one of the upsides we had was, it has taken so long for us to get launched, in some part because our center wasn't the product of faculty or student activism. I mean, it was certainly born out of, what I would call maybe the early phases of the Black Lives Matter anti-racism movement, just immediately in the wake of Michael Brown's murder. But it wasn't like a specific set of demands that had been made by students or faculty, which is how, many race centers end up starting. And so there were some benefits to that. Some of the benefits were that, we were really able to take our time and be very intentional about what we want to do. There were also downsides, right? Which there wasn't a sense of urgency to it. But it means that there was as you're saying, Bill, there was a long period of evolution. So we initially, I think, really wanted, or I envisioned that we would be able to have 3 pillars almost equally standing at launch. And the 3 pillars are research, learning, and community. And it turns out that really wasn't, we weren't able to do that. We were not able to get all 3 pillars sort of erected and up at the same time. So really the initial emphasis has been on the research pillar, and I think there's lots and lots of reasons for that. So I think there's still a lot to be thought through regarding the learning piece, and lots of opportunities with the learning piece and also the community piece. Something else I think that maybe I didn't fully anticipate was the role that CRE2 would need to play in helping to build an infrastructure that would be university-wide